minutes, the place will start to fill up a little bit more. But for those of you here, so glad you're able to be with us this morning, worshiping with us. If you're a guest, thank you in particular for coming out to connect with us. We'd love to get to know you a little bit and also bless you for coming. We got a little gift bag. If you use the program that you were handed or the bulletin when you came in, there's a little tear-off tab there. You can fill that out, as much information as you're comfortable with. And just drop that off at the cafe on your way out. And they've got a little gift bag out there. It's got an Oakwood mug, some chocolate in there, a little bit of information about the church. Just a simple way for us to say thanks for coming to worship with us today. And then we'll follow up and see if there's anything else we can do to help and encourage you as well. There's a lot of things that are happening. We've been talking about them over the last few weeks, so I definitely want to make sure we highlight a few things today. One, baptism is coming up in just a couple of weeks, and normally we do kind of one towards the beginning of the summer, one towards the end of the summer. More than likely, this will be our big lake baptism or outdoor baptism. It may be a lake, maybe a pool this year. We're still looking at a couple options. We will have that nailed down this week, but the date is set, Sunday, July 30th. So we're working on setting up meetings. If you're interested in being baptized, we've got a list of people who have already said that. We're trying to set up meetings just to kind of make sure we're checking in with everyone, make sure everyone understands what it's about, and is prepared for that. And it gives us an opportunity just to spend some time with you, get to know you a little bit as well. But if you're interested in being a part of that, ready to take that step, please contact us. You can turn in your form in the offering basket and just check off that you're interested in baptism. Talk to me, contact the church office this week, and we'll set something up. Baptism is one of those special things that we do to show our faith in Christ. It's not some miracle thing that saves us, but it's an outward expression of the reality of our faith in Jesus as our Lord and Savior. And so we're excited for this opportunity coming up, and we'll make sure we're not leaving anyone out. Hopefully many will be able to come after the service to that location and celebrate with us as well. So keep that in mind. Soulfire does have a trash night. Last week they weren't supposed to have one, but they had a last minute one pop up. They have one that's been scheduled for a while, coming up starting at 5 o'clock today. And that's at the Raymond Family Farm. And I've heard it's farm, fun, and food. So if you want to, students and parents, kids will have an opportunity to maybe try their hands at a few farm chores. They're also going to play some fun games, have some food, just be together, building connections and relationships. That's what they do throughout the summer with these trash nights, totally relaxed at someone's house. I don't know if this night's going to be totally relaxed if they're doing some farm chores, but that's good for them. I grew up on the farm in junior high and high school. I may not have liked it all the time, but I look back and it was really good for me to do some of those chores and learn to work hard and learn what it takes to feed lots of people around the world as well. So that's coming up tonight, parents. If you want the address or want information, it's on the parent Soulfire page or on the Soulfire Facebook page as well. You can get that information there. Greg's been pretty good about getting that out to everyone. Lots of other opportunities coming up. The ladies have their flip-flops, Faith and Friends event this Thursday from 6 to 9. Not too late to be a part of that, so you can sign up. There's still more flyers available. The men have a couple of opportunities coming up with the baseball game on the 27th of July in a couple of weeks, and then a camping trip coming up in August. You can sign up for those in the lobby. I know Terry Nailey and Shrek had a great turnout. Had over a dozen people here for his evangelism seminar this last week. It just got started. If you're interested in learning about sharing your faith effectively, I encourage you to be here Tuesday night, 6:30, for a couple of hours, just to learn from one of our missionaries and one of the gifted people that God's given to us that's passionate about sharing his faith and wants to help you be able to take God's story, your story, weave those together so you're equipped to be able to share about Jesus as well as you encounter different people. So come on out for that if you're interested. The Stand Strengthening Golf Outing, a fundraiser for one of our local missionaries, is coming up in August too. So Joe is in the back on the camera. You can talk to him. There are a few others. Get signed up. You can go as an individual, get a foursome together. There's whole sponsorship opportunities. So this is a great way to have some fun and sponsor one of our missionary partners as well. So we've been talking about a lot of those things. There's more information in the bulletin on our website. If you have questions, just let us know. Let me pray for us, and then we'll continue with our worship this morning. Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for your great love for us, and thank you for all that's happening in the lives of people this summer. We talk about all these events and activities and classes that are happening, and it's not just about being busy and having a lot of activity going on, Lord, but we want to be a family that's committed to growing in our faith, building deep relationships with one another, loving you and making you known in this community, and all those things that are happening are helping that fellowship and that faith to grow. and making you known. And we just thank you for the opportunities that we have as a family of believers to gather together, to worship, to grow, to serve, to glorify you as well. And that's why we're here this morning, to open our hearts to your word, to your spirit. And thank you for your presence here in Jesus' name.
Amen. Stand with me if you will. We're going to sing together this morning, so get your singing voices warmed up, and let's worship the Lord together this morning. God Savior, Redeemer, lifted me from the miry clay, Almighty, forever. I will never be the same as you gave me. From the everlasting to the world we live, Father's only Son. Come on now, sing it out. And you lived, and you died, and you rose again on high, and you opened the way for the world to live again. Hallelujah, for all you have done. All right, let's say that again. My Savior, Redeemer. My Savior, Redeemer, lifted me from the miry clay, Almighty, forever. I will never be the same as you gave me. From the everlasting to the world we live, Father's only Son. And you lived, and you died, and you rose again on high, and you opened the way for the world to live again. Hallelujah, you died, and you rose again on high, and you opened the way for the world to live again. Hallelujah, for all you from the everlasting to the world we live, Father's only Son, as you came near. From the everlasting to the world we live, Father's only Son. You lived, you died, and you rose again on high, and you opened the way for the world to live again. Hallelujah, for all you have done. Hallelujah, for all you have done. Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. And we do thank you, God, for all that you've done in all of our lives. Hallelujah. Let's sing to the King this morning.
verse of this song is the second verse. Because it speaks to where we are right now. For his returning, we watch and we pray. We will be ready at the dawn of that day. And we'll join in singing with all the redeemed. Amen. Satan is vanquished and our Jesus is king. Somebody say amen this morning. Amen. Let's sing that verse.
For his returning, we watch and we pray. We will be ready the dawn of that day. We'll join in singing with all the redeemed. Satan is vanquished and Jesus is king. Let us sing a song declaring we belong to Jesus. He's all we need. Lift up a heart of praise. Sing out with voices, praise to Jesus. Sing to the King. Let us sing a song declaring we belong to Jesus. He's all we need. Lift up a heart of praise. Sing out with voices, praise to Jesus. Sing to the King.
Hallelujah, we serve the risen King this morning. Amen. Woo. All right. Amen. God is good this morning. Oops. Hold on, I have the wrong music. I'm sorry. That's going to go really bad in just about a second. That'll sound right. Okay. Nothing worse than playing the wrong chord. All right. Oh, and it's time for the offering. All of that. I'm rushing into this. All right. Well, let's pray. Go ahead and be seated for a moment. The ushers are going to come forward. They're going to collect the offering. They get really mad when I forget that part. Shane calls me into his office. No, we got to do the offering. So, you guys are really good. For those who are going to take the offering this morning, it's a blessing to give back a tithe of what God has given us. Amen. Father, we come before you and we thank you, God, this morning. We thank you for the way that you do provide for us. God, that you look out for our needs, and Lord, it is our pleasure and our joy to turn around and give back to you, God, for the operation of the church, and more than that, Lord, out of a joyous heart. We thank you and we praise you this morning in Jesus' name. Amen. place where mercy reigns and never dies. There's a place where streams of grace flow deep and wide. There's a place where sin and shame are powerless. My heart is peace with God. all to you this morning. Lord, it was your blood that was shed on Calvary, God, to save our lives, to provide us eternity with you. And Lord, we are forever grateful for that. We thank you this morning. Lord, I come and I confess, bowing here, I find my rest. And without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Sing that again. Lord, I come. Lord, I come. I confess. Bowing here, I find my rest. And without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. that we can knit our hearts together as one congregation and worship you, Lord, in spirit and in truth. God, I pray that you would open up our hearts now as the word is brought. Let it change us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Kevin and worship team. Definitely want to make that the prayer of our hearts each and every day, right? We need the Lord. We need His Spirit, and as we head into looking to His Word today, that's something we want to make sure we're clinging to. I just want to encourage everybody, thank you for being here. As we go through this Gospel Project this summer, I want to encourage you to keep reading through all of Scripture. We're taking these snapshots as we journey through. We can't cover everything. It's really going to be a blessing to you if you can take time to read throughout 1st and 2nd Samuel. That's the series we're in, God the King, right now. As we go through 6 weeks, we're looking at 1st and 2nd Samuel. So I encourage you to open up your Bible, or if you have a commute, there's a couple of apps you can download where you can listen to the Bible on your way to and from work and help you get that bigger picture context as we zoom in on some spots as well. So today we're looking at the story of David a little bit more. Last week, if you remember, we were looking at Saul, and we looked at kind of some warning signs. Throughout 1 Samuel, you had David and Saul kind of pitted against each other as characters. And we looked at some warning signs of a proud, rebellious heart last week. And this week we're going to get to look a little bit at David and some of the lessons we have from him as well. And before we go there, I want to take a time. It's been a little while since we've showed one of these, but it's going to take a few minutes. But I want to kind of give you an update. Maybe you've been going traveling, or maybe you haven't had time to read through Samuel. I've got friends out in Oregon that are working with something called the Bible Project. We've shown a couple of these before. And I love the way they help us understand Scripture by storytelling and some visual work as they outline the book of 1 Samuel. So we're going to look at this, help us kind of frame in maybe a little bit of the bigger context of what we're looking at, and then we'll dive into God's Word together. So enjoy this.
The books of 1st and 2nd Samuel. They're two separate books in our modern Bibles, but that division is due simply to scroll length. It was originally written as one coherent story. We're just going to cover the book of 1 Samuel in this video. So after Israel was rescued from slavery in Egypt, they made a covenant with God at Mount Sinai and eventually came into the Promised Land. And there, Israel was supposed to be faithful to God and obey the covenant commands. Before the book of Samuel, Judges showed how Israel failed at that task big time. It was a period of moral chaos, and it showed Israel's need for wise, faithful leaders. The book of Samuel provides an answer to that need. The book of Samuel's story focuses on three main characters. The prophet Samuel, where the book gets its name, then King Saul, and after that, King David. And all three of them transitioned Israel from a group of tribes ruled by judges into a unified kingdom ruled by King David in Jerusalem. And the book of Samuel has a fascinating design that weaves the story of these three characters together in four main parts. Samuel, he's the key leader and prophet in the first section of the book. But then he also plays a key role in the next section, which is Saul's story. And it's told in two movements: Saul's rise to power and then his failures. And the second part is about his downfall and his tragic death. And then the drama of Saul's demise is matched by David's exciting rise to power. And then David's story is told in two movements. First, he rides the wave of his success, followed by his own tragic failure and the slow self-destruction of his family and then his kingdom. The book concludes with an epilogue that reflects back over the whole story. So let's dive in and see how this all unfolds. Part 1 picks up from the chaos of the book of Judges, and we're introduced to a touching story about a woman named Hannah. And she's grieved because she has never been able to have children. And by God's grace, she finally has a son named Samuel. And in joy, she sings this amazing poem in chapter 2. And the poem is all about how God opposes the proud and exalts the humble, about how despite tragedies and human evil, God is working out his purposes in history. And also it's about how God will one day raise up an anointed king for his people. Now, Hannah's poem has been placed here at the beginning of the book to introduce these key themes that we're going to see throughout the whole story, like the next one. Samuel grows up and becomes a great prophet and leader for the people of Israel, at the same time that the Philistines rise to power as Israel's arch nemesis. And in this crucial battle, the Israelites get arrogant, and instead of praying and asking God for help, They trot out the Ark of the Covenant as this kind of magic trophy that will automatically grant them victory in battle. And so because of their arrogant presumption, God allows Israel to lose the battle and the Ark is stolen. So the Philistines, they take the Ark and they place it in the temple of their god, Dagon. And then the God of Israel defeats the Philistines and the god Dagon without an army by sending plagues on the people. And then the Philistines don't want the Ark anymore, obviously, and they send it back to Israel. And the point of this little story seems to be this. God is not Israel's trophy, and he opposes pride among the Philistines, but also among his own people. And so Israel needs to remain humble and obedient if they want to experience God's covenant blessing, which opens up into the next large section. The Israelites come to Samuel, and they say, hey, we want a king like all the other nations have. Go find one for us. And so Samuel, he's kind of ticked off, and he goes to consult with God. And God says, yes, their motives are all wrong, but if a king is what they want, give them one. And so we're introduced to the figure of Saul. Now, Saul is a tragic figure because he begins full of promise. He's tall, he's good looking, he's a perfect candidate for a king. But he has deep character flaws. He's dishonest, he lacks integrity, and he seems incapable of acknowledging his own mistakes. And so these flaws become his downfall. He wins some battles at the beginning, but his flaws run so deep, he eventually disqualifies himself by blatantly disobeying God's commands. And so the aging Samuel confronts Saul and Israel. He had warned the people that they would only benefit from a king who's humble and faithful to God. Otherwise, the kings of Israel will bring ruin. So he informs Saul that God is going to raise up a new king to replace him. And so Saul's downfall begins, as God at the same time is working behind the scenes to raise up that new king. It's an insignificant shepherd boy named David. He's the least likely candidate to be king, but the famous story of David and Goliath shows that God's choice of David is not based on his family status, but simply on his radical and humble trust in the God of Israel. And so this story embodies all of the themes of Hannah's poem. Proud Saul and Goliath are brought low, while humble David is exalted. From here, we watch Saul slowly descend into madness, while David rises to power. So David starts working for Saul as a general, and he's winning all of the battles, and he's also winning all of the fame. And so Saul gets jealous, and he starts chasing David around, hunting him, trying to kill him. David's done nothing wrong. And so David simply runs and waits in the wilderness. And here we see David's true character. He has multiple opportunities to kill Saul, but he doesn't. He simply trusts that despite Saul's evil, God will raise up a king for his people. What's interesting too is that many of the poems of David that you find in the book of Psalms are linked to this very period of his life. And they all express the same attitude of trust. And so this section of the book ends with Saul coming to a grisly death after losing a battle with the Philistine. 1 Samuel tells some of the most intricate, well-told stories you find anywhere in the Bible. And the characters Saul and David, they're portrayed very realistically. And the author's putting them forward as character studies so that you can find yourself in them. So in Saul's story, we see a warning. It's crucial that we reflect on our own character flaws and how they harm us and other people. And with God's help, we need to humble ourselves and deal with our dark side so that Saul's story doesn't become ours. David, on the other hand, is presented as an example of patience and trust in God's timing in our lives. And so he's running in the wilderness, being chased by Saul. David had every reason to think that God had abandoned him, but that's not what he thinks. And so David's story encourages us to trust that despite human evil, God is working out his purposes to oppose the proud and to exalt. And that's what 1 Samuel is all about.
I love those videos. A couple guys went to Bible college doing that. Looking forward to spending some time next year. I'm going to try to get out to Oregon and spend time with one of those guys. But they just have a heart for God's Word, and they have a heart to help other people understand it and the context of it. So get on there. We won't always be able to show these, but I encourage you to get on there as you're reading through, and hopefully something like that, 5, 6, 7 minutes, gives you just a snapshot of the big picture of where we're at in God's Word. And so as we dig in today, I just wanted to kind of give people a little update and encourage you to use the tools and resources that people put together to help us understand God's Word. They've printed a big, huge book, like a 6-pound thing that's got all the charts and an introduction, and I was excited to order one of those and have that come here soon. So they've got lots of good resources out there, as do many other people. All right, how many of you guys like a good underdog story? For me, that's one of my favorites. I love movies or books or stories, just hearing an underdog story. And that's kind of what we get to look at a little bit today. But one of the best ones that I ever heard, I'm not a huge hockey guy, but a few years after I was born, 1980 Lake Placid Olympics is one of those classic underdog stories. And if you guys know anything about that, it was the U.S. hockey team. It was the youngest team that had ever been fielded by the U.S. at that point. Most of the kids were scrawny little college kids, at that point. I think they may have had a few other professionals beyond that, but they were scrawny college kids. Not a lot of expectation for them going on, but they went up against a tough opponent in their first match and they tied. And then they went on to win 4 straight matches to put them into the medal round. And so at that point, they're going up against who? Russia. Some of you guys are hockey fans and you know what's going on, right? And Russia was a juggernaut, right? They were the bully. They were the favorite. When you think about, a bunch of young college strappy snot-nosed kids playing for the U.S. team, and then here's Russia, it's the Warriors. They're the people that put a beat down on everybody. And in 20 years, the U.S. had beaten them once. Just a few weeks before this, they played the Russian team, and I think they got beat 10-3. They just slaughtered them, pushed them all over the ice, and just had their way with them. But guess what happened in the 80 Olympics? These, fresh, green, snot-nosed little college brats went up against the big guys, and they beat them 4-3. And they went on to win the gold medal match too. And so it's one of those classic underdog stories, and you look at them and you're like, there's just no way these guys have a chance. These guys have been raining on the ice for years. These guys have no chance whatsoever. But we love it when the little guy comes through. Somebody that's overlooked comes through and gets the victory. And we love those kind of underdog stories. And as we head into looking at David compared to Saul last week, and you saw a little bit in that introductory video, that's kind of what we're looking at a little bit. It's an underdog story of this little runt guy that doesn't look like much of a king, but we learned some good things from him. And so last week we looked at some of those warning signs from Saul's life. And today we're going to look at the rise of an unlikely king. And if you have your Bibles with you, we're going to be in 1 Samuel 16 through 18. We're going to be reading through 4 different chunks of that. We really value the public reading of Scripture and try to cut some of it down. But I really think we need to look at some of those today. So we'll read a few chunks, draw some of the principles about what it means to be a man after God's own heart and what this underdog story of God rising up an unlikely king looked like. And the big idea is straight from the top is this: a man after God's own heart doesn't always look the part. And that really comes out of the memory verse for this week. And I realize I didn't put this in the notes, so if you want to jot that down, 1 Samuel 6:7, you can look that up. It's on our website. It went out in the email this week too. But the memory verse is this: the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." So we looked at Saul last week as this giant of a guy, and the people said, yeah, he's going to be a good king. God looks at things a little bit differently. So that's where we're going today. I encourage you to look at those scriptures and be thinking about that. Let's pray and prepare our hearts for what God has for us. We'll jump in. Heavenly Father, thank you. Lord, we are all underdogs because we're not worthy of even sitting at your feet, but you've made a way for us to do that. And we just thank you for the opportunity to know you, to love you. We pray today that your Spirit would be reigning in our hearts, that your word would come through loud and clear, that your wisdom and your eyes would be upon us. Lord, we realize we're frail, we're humans, we look at things through our perspective, and we want to see things through your perspective. So help us to do that today. Challenge us, encourage us, make us like Jesus. We pray, amen. All right, and so as we get into this, we're going to look at the rise of an unlikely king. And that king is David. And on the front side of your notes, we're looking at that. And we're going to read first from 1 Samuel 16, 1 through 13. So if you have your Bibles, go ahead and look at that with me. In 16, the Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you grieve over Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided for myself a king among his sons." And Samuel said, "How can I go? If Saul hears that he will kill me." And the Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord, and invite Jesse to the sacrifice. And I will show you what you shall do. And you shall anoint for me him who I declare to you." Samuel did what the Lord commanded and came to Bethlehem. The elders of the city came to meet him trembling and said, "Do you come peaceably?" And he said, "Peaceably. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice." And he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they came, he looked on Eliab and thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed is before him." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel. And he said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." Then Jesse made Shammah pass by. And he said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." And Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. And Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen these." Then Samuel said, "Are all your sons here?" And he said, "There remains yet the youngest, but behold, he is keeping the sheep." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and get him, for we will not sit down until he comes here." And he sent and brought him in, and now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. And the Lord said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is he." Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. And Samuel rose up and went to Rome. And so there's all kinds of irony going on throughout this whole story. And we love seeing things that are ironic in life, but there's tons of it throughout this whole story. And so we think about last week, and the calling of Saul as king. And we were told that he stood head and shoulders above everyone else, and he was a handsome man, and a powerful man, and a strong man, a man's king, right? Somebody that we can look up to as a leader. And here we are again, and Samuel, even Samuel, God's man here, the prophet, who should know better, he's still looking through whose eyes? Man's eyes. Man looks at outward appearance. And so he comes and he sees all of Jesse's sons, and he starts with the strongest and the best looking one of all of them apparently, and the father did that too, and he starts parading them before him, and even Samuel's like, "Yeah, this has got to be the guy, right?" But he's not. And what we see is a humble heart is more important than looking the part. When you're talking about being the man that God has chosen, having a humble heart is more important than looking the part. And David didn't look the part. Even his dad, and obviously later we see his brothers, didn't have a whole lot of hope or respect in him, right? It says he was the youngest. You could also say the word that his father said, he was the smallest. He was the runt of the litter, for sure. If we're raising somebody up and thinking they're going to be the leader, we don't usually pick the run of the litter to be that person. But that's who God saw. He saw something that the father didn't see. He saw something that the brothers couldn't see. He saw something that probably Samuel couldn't even see looking through man's eyes, because he was looking past that outward appearance. And the words used there, that he was the youngest or the smallest, and that whole thing that he was ruddy in appearance. That could just mean he was a tan guy, but it could mean that he was kind of red-skinned and looked like a newborn baby. It was kind of maybe a demeaning term. He's just emphasizing, we didn't hold this guy highly. He just looks kind of young, fresh, runt. Nobody special. Surely his father thought so low, and he didn't even have him come to the feast, right? For the sacrifice. He had no expectation that could have been the person. But that's because we look at things, from man's perspective, not God's perspective. And what God is telling us over and over, you saw in the intro video, it's that big picture throughout Scripture that we see. God humbles the proud, right? And he exalts the humble. That is all throughout Scripture in so many ways. And we see clear pictures of it here in the picture of Saul and the picture of David. And when we think about leadership and leadership skills and who we want to put in leadership, we don't always think so much about the heart and humility. And we think about skills and power and influence and all the things we kind of talked about a little bit last week. And we've kind of had a little bit of some political stuff thrown in the last few weeks. And this week we had a great opportunity to throw in one more little comment. Just a couple days ago, we had President Bush and President Clinton get together for a presidential scholars meeting. They've got a leadership training opportunity where they come together and they do some leadership training with some young hopefuls. And these two kind of came together for like a graduation ceremony. And they sat down, they were being interviewed. And let me show you just a little clip from that.
Former Presidents George W. Bush and Bill Clinton stressing the importance of humility in the Oval Office. The two former commanders-in-chief appeared together on Thursday at a leadership event. When they were asked what they consider the most important quality a president should have, here's how they responded.
I think it starts with Bill Clinton being a person who refused to lord his victory over Dad. In other words, he was humble in victory, which is very important in dealing with other people.
If you want to be president, realize it's about the people, not about you. You want to be able to say, people are better off when I quit, kids had a better future, things were coming together. You don't want to say, God, look at all the people I meet. I think he would tell you that the best thing can happen to you in your politics is to be consistently underestimated.
That's pretty good at that.
I had no idea that was happening this week. I just saw these headlines popping up about past presidents speaking on the value of humility. And man, wouldn't you love to hear some of that stuff during the campaign trail? Amen, right? But that's the reality, and maybe some wisdom and perspective comes after serving in the office for a while. But we need to keep that in mind from the beginning. When we think about leaders or think about who we aspire to, it doesn't matter what we look like on the outside. It matters what our heart is on the inside, and humility has got to be at the center of that. And that's David's example for us. So we got to remember that when we're talking about an unlikely king or the rise of someone in God's eyes, a humble heart is more important than looking the part. And so that was one of the things that definitely came up as we look through this. The next one we're going to look at here is the second point, and we'll get into a scripture here in a second. But a humble heart obeys even when overlooked or overqualified. And how many of you guys got a chance to see the new Spider-Man movie last week? A few. It's a good one. I encourage you to get out there. Our family got a chance to go see it Friday night. And I know they start remaking some of these movies over and over. Sometimes it gets old. But it was entertaining. It was good. There's some good, valuable principles in there. But here we are. We're looking at Peter. And he's a young guy, right, in high school. And he just finds out he's got these powers, right? And he'd just gone and fought with the Avengers and done some pretty cool things and helped them out. And now he's sitting back home and he's got all these powers and he's got this cool suit from Tony Stark with all these extra pieces there to help him do his job, help him use his powers to the best of his ability. And here he is, like, helping recover a stolen bicycle and helping a lost lady find directions, and she buys him a churro. And I don't want to give away too much of it, but he's sitting there with all these powers and all this aspiration, and he's just thinking, man, Stark's just totally wasting my potential. He doesn't get it. He doesn't see all that I can do. And the reality is that's pretty typical of a lot of young people. It can be typical of all of us, no matter how old or young we are, how much seasoned experience we have, but especially when it comes to young people and leaders who have dreams and aspirations, see their potential, and they really think, oh, other people can't see my potential, can't see my gifts, and man, all we're doing is stewing over all the stuff I could be doing instead of doing the stuff that's in front of us. And I tell you, David was one of those guys. We can't look at all these passages, but David was one of those guys that had some pretty lowly job descriptions in his life. And when we saw this first chapter, everybody else is coming for the feast, and there's some pretty strong people. Where's David? He's tending the sheep, right? Pretty glorious job, real fun. He's off away from everybody else, taking care of the sheep. And he's doing that faithfully from what we know. And in another passage, we're going to look a lot at the second part of chapter 16, just for the sake of time. But shortly after this time, where David is anointed king, God uses a situation where he puts an evil spirit on Saul. The Spirit of the Lord has departed from Saul, and he puts this evil spirit on Saul, and Saul's just starting to go crazy, and then he's just bothered by that. And again, the irony comes in where his advisors say, you should find someone who's gifted at playing music to come in and soothe you, basically, and the spirit will depart from you. Well, who do they find to do that? David. He's a skillful musician. He's a shepherd, and he's apparently out there playing, the harp to all the sheep. Well, to calm them and keep them together, whatever. He's a skillful musician. People knew about it, so they call for David. He comes in, and here's the rejected king being served by this scrawny little shepherd boy musician who's been anointed the new king, and he doesn't know it yet. And you just see the irony of that. And he's playing the music, and he's soothing Saul and all this stuff. David knew at that point he was anointed king, that he was serving as a musician. And then we're going to start and get into chapter 17, and we're going to see where David had another role in the midst of this, where he's a messenger. And we're going to read through that here in a bit. But the big point is that a humble heart obeys even when they're overlooked or overqualified. It's easy to get critical of, I should be doing more, why aren't other people trusting me more, all that kind of stuff. That's not a humble heart, that's a proud heart. I want to exalt myself. I want to make sure that everyone knows how good I am, knows everything that I can do, right? And we don't see that from David, and it's an amazing example. Let's go ahead and read through 17. We're going to start in verse 1, because this is just a powerful chapter. We can certainly do a message on all of this by itself, but we'll look at some bigger picture stuff today. Let's read through 17, 1 through 22. Now the Philistines gathered their armies for battle, and they were gathered at Sukkah, which belongs to Judah, and encamped between Sukkah and Azekah in Ephes Dammim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered and encamped in the valley of Elah, and drew up in the line of battle against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on the mountain on one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side, with the valley between them. And there came out from camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits in a span. That's about 9 feet 9, from what we know. He had a helmet of bronze on his head, and was named, armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat of mail was 5,000 shekels of bronze. And he had bronze armor on his legs, and a javelin of bronze slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels. That's, from what we can tell, about 15 pounds potentially of iron. And his shield bearer went before him. He stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why have you come out to draw up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and you servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourself and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." And the Philistine said, "I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." When Saul and all of Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of Ephrathite of Bethlehem in Judah named Jesse, who had 8 sons. In the days of Saul, the man was already old and advanced in years. The 3 oldest sons of Jesse had followed Saul to battle. And the names of his 3 sons who went to battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and next to him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest. The 3 eldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to feed his father's sheep in Bethlehem. For 40 days the Philistine came forward and took his stand morning and evening. And Jesse said to David his son, "Take for your brothers an ephah of this parched grain and these 10 loaves, and carry them quickly to the camp to your brothers. Also take these 10 cheeses to the commander of their 1,000. See if your brothers are well, and bring some token from them." Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting the Philistines. And David rose early in the morning and left the sheep with the keeper and took the provisions and went, as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the encampment as the host was going out to make battle lines, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines drew up for battle, army against army. And David left the things in charge of the keeper of the baggage and ran to the ranks and went and greeted his brothers. We'll pick it up from there in a minute. But they're kind of setting the scene here, for this big battle that's getting ready to take place. And we're seeing this huge guy, Goliath, is coming out and challenging the Israelites. You see the fear of Saul and all the Israelites. And then there's this little aside of David. David's going back and forth. He's not old enough. From what we know of Jewish history, he had to be about 20 to fight in the war. We don't have a precise date of what David's age is when he was anointed king, and here when he's going against Goliath. But we know he became king of Judah when he was 30. And we kind of worked our way backwards from there. We can surmise, knowing that he's probably not 20 because he's not in the army, which was kind of the tradition. He's probably somewhere between the ages of 15, 17, depending on if there was twin brothers or some of those things. There's different assumptions you make there. You can't get real strict. But he was probably somewhere between 10 and 13 when he was anointed king. He was probably between the ages of 15 and 17, somewhere right now. And what's he doing? He's still taking care of Dad's sheep. He's going back and forth from Saul. He's been doing the musician thing. And here he's now a messenger boy, right? He's delivering the bread, he's delivering the cheeses, and Dad wants to make sure his sons are okay. And we don't get any sense that David's grumbling, complaining about that. He says he does. It says he does what his father commanded him to do. And for me, that's just a huge example to us. That you see him obeying even when he's overlooked, even when he's overqualified, even when he knows he's been anointed as the next king. And that's a powerful thing. One principle I think we can learn from that is that before you can be in authority, you have to learn to be under authority, right? And I think it's a good principle for all of us to learn and be able to internalize and make sure we're comfortable with. So that's the second thing that we see there. And the third one is this. A humble heart fights for God's fame. Let's pick up the story and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So continuing on in 17:23 through 54. As he talked with them, and again David came, talking with his brothers, greeted them. As he talked with them, behold, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came up out of the ranks of the Philistines and spoke the same words as before. And David heard him. All the men of Israel, when they saw the man, they fled from him and were much afraid. And the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And the king will enrich the man who kills him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David said to the men who stood by him, what shall be done for the man who kills the Philistine and takes away this reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him in the same way, so shall it be done to the man who kills him. Now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men. And Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, why have you come down? And with whom have you left the few sheep in the wilderness? I know your presumption and the evil of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle. And David said, what have I done now? Was it not but a word? And he turned away from him and toward another, and spoke in the same way. And the people answered him again as before. When the words of David that David spoke were heard, they repeated them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail him because of him. Your servant will go and fight this Philistine. And Saul said to David, you are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth. But David said to Saul, your servant used to keep sheep for his father. And when there came a lion or a bear, and he took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of its mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck and killed him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God. And David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. Then Saul clothed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of bronze on his head, and clothed him with a coat of mail. And David strapped his sword over his armor, and he tried in vain to go, for he had not tested them. Then David said to Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not tested them. So David put them off. And then he took his staff in his hand, and chose 5 smooth stones from the brook, and put them in his shepherd's pouch. His sling was in his hand as he approached the Philistine. And the Philistine moved forward and came near to David with his shield bearer in front of him. And when the Philistine looked and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance. And the Philistine said to David, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. The Philistine said to David, "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." And David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head, and I will give the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all his assembly may know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand." When the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag and took out a stone and slung it and struck the Philistine on his forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the ground. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and struck down the Philistine and killed him. There was no sword in the hand of David. And then David ran and stood over the Philistine, took his sword, and drew it out of its sheath, and killed him and cut off his head with it. When the Philistines saw that the champion was dead, they fled. And the men of Israel and Judah rose with a shout and pursued the Philistines as far as Gath and the gates of Ekron, so that the wounded Philistines fell on the way from Sharon as far as Gath and Ekron. And the people of Israel came back from chasing the Philistines, and they plundered their camp. David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. Epic story, and maybe you've heard it before, and it's easy to tune out those stories. And again, this is one you can preach on multiple weeks. There's so many things in there. But I hope you see when we think about the rise of men like the King and the reality that a humble heart fights for God's fame. Man, you see that throughout this over and over. Is David, challenging Goliath because he's like, man, I can take this dude, I got him, right? That's not his attitude at all. It breaks David's heart that this uncircumcised Philistine, this heathen guy is swearing by his own gods, he's defying Israel, and he's cursing God. He's essentially mocking the Israelites and mocking God. And he's dishonored him, he's defiled and defied God. And it breaks David's heart, and he can't stand for it. And David knows, okay, David's down here, Goliath's up here. But he knows God's way up here, right? And he's willing to go out there. And even as he kind of recounts maybe his thing, Saul's like, yeah, you can't go out there, you're just a little runt. He's going to step on you like a flea, he's going to squash you, right? And then David kind of recounts some of his, maybe his credentials in terms of killing the bear and the lion. But even in that, who was it, he said, delivered him from the mouth of the bear and the paw? It was God. And he wasn't talking about his skill. He was saying, I did it because I had to protect the sheep, but God was the one that delivered from that. And in the same way, he's going to deliver me from this Philistine. He's fighting for God's fame. He's continuing to put the glory on God instead of himself. And that's just a huge reminder for us. Contrast that a little bit with what we saw last week with Saul. Saul went out to battle, and came back, and what did he do? You remember? Build a monument to himself, right? And that's just one example of Saul. He's continually worried about what do other people think of me, and we're going to see here in a little bit. That becomes what makes him basically crazy the rest of his life. He's so worried. What do people think of me? Do they realize that I'm good, that I'm great? He's not fighting for God's fame, for God's glory. He's fighting for his own. But a humble heart fights for God's fame, and that's something that he will continue to remember. So it's a powerful story. Reading through it, hopefully you just see some of those themes that are in there. And we'll have time at other times to come back and teach through that tonight. The fourth thing that we're going to look at, a humble heart refrains from retaliation. We're going to look a little bit in 1 Samuel 18. I'm going to start in verse 6. As they were coming home, when David returned from striking down the Philistine, the women came out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet Saul, with tambourines and with songs of joy and with musical instruments. And the women sang to one another as they celebrated. Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s. And Saul was very angry, and this saying displeased him. He said, they have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed thousands, and what more can he have but the kingdom? And Saul eyed David from that day on. The next day, a harmful spirit of God rushed upon Saul, and he raved within his house while David was playing the lyre. And as he did day by day, Saul had a spear in his hand. And Saul hurled the spear, for he thought, I will pin David to the wall. But David evaded him twice. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but he had departed from Saul. So Saul removed him from his presence and made him a commander over 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David had success in all of his undertakings, for the Lord was with him. And when Saul saw that he had great success, he stood in fearful awe of him. So, again, we go back and read through the story when David was, playing. Remember, this harmful spirit comes upon Saul, and David's playing the lyre and makes the harmful spirit go away. That's what was happening earlier. Now, it's just driving him more crazy. He hears the music, and he understands that David's getting more fame than him, and instead of being pacified and the spirit going away, it drives him crazy because he's jealous and he's angry. And what's he do? He tries to kill him. He's going to put him to the wall and kill him. Now, what's the normal response when we throw a spear at somebody? When we throw a spear, what's the normal response? Huh? Come on, you gotta play along. That's why I have 3, because they don't always fly well. You gotta grab it by the tip, get the weight of it. Sorry, I should have had something heavier, I guess. The reality is, our normal response, right? When someone throws a spear at us, when they do something to wrong us, I'm going to pick the spear up and throw it back. I'm going to defend myself. That's what our normal way of operating is. I mean, we see something totally different from David in this passage and for the next number of years of his life. And it should challenge us and make us think a little bit about our natural human reaction to retaliate when we're harmed. And you go on from here, and this is kind of the start of Saul going crazy, and he just pursues David. It says he had his eye on David from here, and later on it says that he was his enemy from that day forward. And chapter after chapter, now he's sending him out as a commander, and he's hoping he's going to get killed in battle. And later, that doesn't work. So, he kind of tricks him into, I'll give you my daughter, but you got to get me 200 foreskins from the Philistines, as a bride price. And his hope is he's going to go out and try to do this, and he's going to get killed, right? All these things are to try to trick him and to try to destroy David in different ways of manipulation. He's constantly going after David, trying to take him down and take him out. And then you get, later on, in the midst of this, we see in chapter 24, at 18 we see he doesn't pick up the spear and hurl it back, and there's other times where he throws the spears at him too, and he doesn't pick it up. But in chapter 24 we see a picture where David's in a cave. He's been hiding in the hills and the caves for years, and at one point as Saul's pursuing him, Saul goes into a cave to use the restroom. And he's in there by himself, and he doesn't know that David and his men are in there, and David has the opportunity to strike him down. And all of David's friends and companions are saying, this is the day where God has delivered him into your hand. Go, take him down, take your kingdom. And he has every opportunity to do that and just be done with it. And he could have seen that as, this is the Lord delivering him into my hands and doing that. But his response was very different. He says, the Lord forbid that I put out my hand against the Lord's anointed. And then as Saul goes to leave, he went and cut off a little tassel on his robe. And as Saul goes to leave the cave, he kind of goes out after him and says, Saul, I could have killed you. Look, I just snipped this off of your robe. I could have killed you. I could have took you down. And he says this, may the Lord judge between me and you and avenge me against you, but my hand shall not be against you. And so years of being on the run and being pursued and being, trying to be killed by Saul. And David still doesn't retaliate. He has multiple opportunities to do that. Huge, huge challenge for us and reflection on what it means to have a humble heart instead of a prideful heart, a self-honoring heart, a vengeful heart. And it's a huge picture. And I start thinking about that and I think, why? How could he have that kind of perspective? And I think the last thing we're going to look at ultimately maybe overrides a lot of the things we've looked at today, or overarches those things. And it's this: a humble heart trusts in God's timing. A humble heart trusts in God's timing. So if David was anointed as king at the age of 10 or 13, fights Goliath at 15 or 17, somewhere there, he doesn't become king, and it's even only king of Judah, part of the kingdom, when he's 30. And then he does that for 7.5 years, and then eventually becomes king over all of Israel, the united kingdom that we see. So we know he's got over a decade. Even if we can't be precise, he's got over a decade in there from when he's anointed king, maybe almost 2 decades from when he's anointed king to when he actually becomes king. And in the midst of that time, he had lots of opportunities to take it into his own hands. But because he trusted in God's timing, he didn't do that. Because he trusted in God's sovereignty, he didn't do that. Because he wanted to obey and submit to God's authority, he didn't do that. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, this one, it does overarch a lot of things. We are impatient, impetuous people. And it is tough for us to wait on God's timing. Especially if we see an opportunity. Well, maybe this is God's way, it's right here in front of me. Let me just seize it and take it, Praise the Lord, he's right there. And I think we see that. It's just like we talked about with young people in particular earlier, where it's tough to obey when we're feeling overlooked or we're feeling overqualified, and we've got these dreams and desires. And certainly David had some of those too. He was surrounded by his brothers and some of that was in there. He wanted to be a good leader, he wanted to be faithful, and he was a humble man after God's own heart. For me, I think back when I first graduated from Bible college. My wife and I worked our way through Bible college by waiting tables at the old spaghetti factory out in Portland, Oregon. I did that for a number of years together, and I helped lead the wait staff there. And then as I graduated Bible college, I was looking for a first full-time pastoral role. I'd done a lot of interning and working in different churches to get experience and to learn and to grow. I got to the point where I was just getting so impatient. I became a manager at the restaurant during that time, and moved up from serving to managing and helping to oversee and run things. But man, my heart was to do other things, right? I didn't want to be serving food. I wanted to be shepherding people and helping people know God and understand the Word. And I got impatient. There's many times I just wanted to quit and start something of my own, and I just had trouble wanting to trust in God's timing for that. At one point, the first church I ended up serving at, we got in touch with each other like over a year before they actually called me to come and serve. And it was back and forth, and the pastor wanted it to happen, and the church was kind of wavering back and forth on the type of person they wanted to bring in. And so back and forth this whole year, it's like the other pastor and myself kind of knew this is what God seemed like he was leading towards. And back and forth from the whole waiting room. And I finally had to just let go and realize that God had a purpose for all that he was doing. And I got opportunities to learn some leadership skills, good and bad during that time. And I got opportunities to learn. I was a pretty quiet guy. I didn't know how to necessarily interact with people and deal with difficult situations and those types of things. And in a restaurant, you get the opportunities to do that. You get to deal with nice people, you get to deal with difficult people, you get to learn lots of different people skills. And I look back and it was a very meaningful and important time for me. So God had a perfect plan, he had a timing. And I had to finally just let go and submit to that and trust that he had a plan and be patient. And we're just not good with that, are we? David's a huge example, I think, of that for us as you think about what he went through. And he was anointed as king, and it's been so easy for him to just think, man, I'm a man. Nobody better challenge me. Nobody better come up against me. God's anointed me. He's chosen me. I'm a man. But he doesn't do that. And he goes through this whole desert experience, so to speak, more in the mountains and the caves, where God's using that for his own character development, for his own growth as well. And so just another thing, I think that's a huge thing for us, that we've got to make sure that we don't act out of impatience or impetuousness, and that we don't take God's actions, God's role into our own hands. We got to learn to trust in his timing. David's a great example of that. Let me wrap up here pretty quick, but I have a few things I want to point out as we think about the big picture of David. First is this: a man after God's own heart is not perfect. As we look at David, he's not a perfect person. I think God's given us a picture of someone that's a humble man that wants to seek God's fame and live for Him and glorify Him. But he's far from perfect. And you see a number of different things. One, you see all the obstacles that he's facing throughout years, decades. Life is not easy. Life is not perfect, even though he was chosen by God and blessed by God. There was lots of obstacles. He had multiple wives, and this was not God's plan and ideal. We know he had up to 7 or 8, but we can tell for sure from Scripture. You can see I put some of the scriptures there. We don't have time to look at those today, but if you're interested in looking at some of that, just realize David was not a perfect man. And in our day and age, we can't be perfect this side of eternity. We can pursue that. We can live for God's glory. But we can be a man after God's own heart, even if we're flawed, even if we're imperfect. Thankfully, God uses imperfect people all throughout Scripture and in our lifetime too. And then later, and PD will talk about this one, there's major mistakes, major sin, adultery, murder, all kinds of stuff. He's got blood on his hands. He's not a perfect person. So that's one important reminder when we think about a man after God's own heart. The second one, realizing that he's not perfect, this is another thing that David shows us about a man after God's own heart. He repents when he's rebuked. We talked about that moment he was in the cave and he snipped off the little corner, the tassel off of the garment. Even in that moment, he was convicted by the Spirit that wasn't the right thing to do. He was kind of doing that to flaunt, and God used it as a teaching moment even after that. But he was convicted by the Spirit in that cave. And later, he's confronted by Nathan for his adultery and for murder and for all that's going on. And in the midst of that, he repents. Does that make him perfect? No, he has to live with a lot of consequences that really comes with the unraveling of his family. It's not a pretty picture. But that relationship with God was restored. He was still seen as a God after man. He was a man after God's own heart. And so that's important. And then the last thing is this, that David was a picture of the perfect man after God's own heart to come, and that's Jesus. And I couldn't help but think as I went through the scriptures this last couple of weeks thinking about David, that not only was David the rise of an unlikely king, there's a number of scriptures that point to Jesus being a descendant of David's line, and we're not going to look at that today. We can look that up. But not only was David, the rise of an unlikely king, but Jesus, he hit all of these points that we've just talked about too. So on the back of your notes, you see that. You don't have to fill all those in. It's the same points from the front. But I just want to make the point that Jesus too was an unlikely king. And he was someone with a humble heart and didn't look the part. And you see that in so many different ways. He was born in Bethlehem, came out of Nazareth, and they said, "What can anything good come out of Nazareth?" He was a poor man, a carpenter's son, nobody as far as they were concerned. Not the type of Messiah or king that they were looking for. They were looking for a king who was going to come in with an army and rule. Or they were looking for a priest that was going to come in and be perfect. And purify everything. And here's this guy that came in and he hung out with sinners and he didn't obey the Sabbath laws, according to them, and all these things. He didn't match their expectations of what a king should be, but he was a man after God's own heart, and he was God's perfect man. And you see in Matthew 11, that God hidden these things from wise men. He's revealed them to humble men. And Jesus is saying, "Come to me, all who labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls." It's a different kind of king, but he's God's kind of king, with a humble heart, even though he didn't look the part. And then again, real quick, he obeyed even when he's overlooked and overqualified. Jesus had to be the most overqualified person, right? We see in Philippians 2. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God to be grasped. But he emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, being found in human form, and he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. The most overqualified person ever in a role, right? All he had to do was die on a cross. He was God himself, all power, all authority. Yet he chose to obey and be the lamb, the sacrificial lamb for us. Just a huge example. Fighting for God's fame. That was Jesus' heart and his prayer. And now is my soul trouble. This is him as he's facing death. And he says, now is my soul troubled. What shall I say? Father, save me from this hour. But for this purpose I have come to this hour. Father, glorify your name. And then a voice came from heaven. I have glorified it and will glorify it again. And Jesus, when he's facing facing death, and he's facing all the ridicule and the shame and the accusations, and he doesn't want to get out of there. He doesn't want to glorify himself. He wants to glorify the Father. That's his prayer in John 17. And you think of the picture where Jesus is coming and he purifies the temple and all the trading going on. He's fighting for God's fame, for God's glory. It breaks his heart when people are taking the glory for themselves, or they're taking away from God and making it this man's religious system. Because he wants to fight for God's fame. His aim and his purpose was to live for God's glory, and that should be ours as well. They're refraining from retaliation. I love what Peter says. He says, for this you have been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example, so that you might follow in his steps. He committed no sin, and neither was deceit found in his mouth. When he was reviled, he did not revile in return. And when he suffered, he did not threaten. But he continued entrusting himself to him who judges justly. And that's that big idea. We've got to trust in God's timing. We've got to trust that God's going to make things right, even if things aren't right today. And we don't take them into our own hands to retaliate. And then trusting in God's timing. Jesus, at one point, his brothers were urging him. They didn't really necessarily believe on it. They were urging him to go up and reveal himself. Who does stuff in secret if they're wanting to be made known, if they're wanting to have fame and have power, who does things in secret? And they're saying, go up there, and make yourself known. And he's saying, no, my time has not yet come. And Jesus could have revealed himself from at any point. And he certainly did in different glimpses, but he knew that God's appointed time and a specific purpose was coming, to entrust himself to that time. And that's just another example for us. I wouldn't be doing my part in terms of just the importance of this passage, pointing to not only David as an example of a humble heart, but the reality that even David was flawed. Even David was a sinner. We've got to look forward to the reality that God brought the true king that was going to reign forever out of the line of David, the perfect king. And that's the person that we get to serve. And that's the opportunity that we have, to be a man after God's own heart, to live for his glory and fame, to make sure we trust ourselves to him, to obey him no matter what role he's put us in today. And so we think about that for us. I'll invite the worship team to come on up, and we'll pray and just kind of close with one song. We think about that for us. We've had 2 weeks. Last week, kind of warning signs, and this week, kind of things that we should be aspiring to as people that want to love God and live for him. And which of the ones today challenges you the most? For me, as I look back, I think it's been that trusting in God's timing. Take just a moment, if you want to, while we sing, or as you go home today, take a moment, just think about which of those things is the biggest challenge for you, and how God might be encouraging and challenging you to be a humble person, if a man or being a man or woman after God's heart. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, thank you for you. Thank you for the reality of it, the great stories, the epic stories and examples of faith and courage, yet the reality of us all being sin, flawed people that need your grace and your mercy. We thank you that you point us towards the King who's come to die on the cross, to give us new life, and who's coming back again to reign forever. We look forward to just worshiping you as our King and Savior for the rest of our lives. And Lord, continue to take our hearts, shape them to be more like you, to be men and women who pursue you and live for your glory, and not living for ourselves and for our own glory and for our own purposes. Help us to trust you, to obey you, to submit to you in all things. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Jesus, you are my King. Jesus, you are my King. Sing that one more time. You are my King. You are my King. You are my King. Jesus, you. Amen. You are dismissed.